Welcome back. It's really great to have you joining us for today's deep dive.
Yeah, glad you're here. We've got a really good one today.
We do. We have a genuinely fascinating exploration ahead of us. We are focusing on a piece of ancient literature that, it fundamentally challenges how we view authority and, well, celebration.
It really does.
We're looking at Song 149. And our mission today is to figure out how this really vibrant text pairs two concepts that we almost never put in the same room.
Right, for sure.
Wild, completely unfiltered celebration, and on the other hand, the really heavy, serious weight of responsibility and justice.
And that tension, that exact tension, is why this text has survived for millennia. I mean, we aren't looking at this as some theological museum piece or, just an abstract ancient poem.
Definitely not.
We are looking at how this text provides a highly relevant, honestly kind of aggressive roadmap for modern influence, for leadership,
Yeah.
and ultimately for deepening your trust in your relationship with God, because it forces a mirror up to how we behave the moment we're given any degree of authority in our lives.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we can bypass reading every single literal line of the opening. Most of you listening are probably already familiar with the general imagery here.
Sure.
So the first 5 verses paint this intensely joyful scene. The text literally calls for Israel to rejoice in their Maker and the children of Zion to be joyful in their King.
It's loud.
It is very loud. It mentions singing a new song, right? Praising in the congregation of saints, praising his name in the dance. It talks about bringing out the timbrel and the harp.
Yeah, the whole band is there.
Exactly. And it even talks about singing aloud upon your beds, which is it's an incredibly vibrant, full-body call to worship.
It is. And the phrase that anchors all of that imagery, the really key phrase, is the new song.
Right.
Because ancient wisdom didn't just throw that phrase around casually. The concept of a new song meant that joy must be continually renewed.
Okay, renewed how?
Well, you cannot mechanically recycle yesterday's gratitude and expect it to sustain you today. It just doesn't work.
That makes me think of the modern gratitude journal.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
You know the trap. You start a journal to be more present, and for the first week, it's great. But after 3 weeks, it becomes this mindless chore.
Right, you're just going through the motions.
Totally. You just scribble down, like, coffee, my dog, a good night's sleep, while you're half awake, just to check a box. And it completely loses the
emotional resonance it was supposed to have.
Exactly.
That is a perfect modern parallel. Because when you just write down coffee for the 100th time, your brain's reward circuits literally stop firing.
Yeah.
The psychological benefit just vanishes.
Wow, yeah.
And the ancient text understood this human tendency toward apathy way before modern psychology ever did. A new song requires a fresh perspective on your life and on your relationship with the divine.
It's an active command.
Yes, it's an active command against spiritual and emotional stagnation. If you're listening and your faith or your everyday gratitude feels lifeless, it's highly likely it's because you are singing an old song out of obligation.
Instead of a new song out of genuine present awareness?
Exactly.
I love that. So it's a call to be completely present with your joy.
Absolutely.
But then right in the middle of this loud, expressive celebration with the harps and the dancing, verse 4 drops this incredibly tender, almost quiet statement.
It's a beautiful shift.
It says, "For the Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation."
And that verse, it fundamentally shifts how a person views their relationship with the divine.
How so?
Well, God isn't presented here as some indifferent clockmaker who just wound up the universe and walked away. And he's not a harsh taskmaster demanding perfection either.
Right. He taketh pleasure in his people.
He actively delights in us. And understanding that is the foundational bedrock for building any real trust in him. It creates a dynamic that is based on love and delight, rather than just fear or, pure obligation.
I really want to dig into that word meek, though, because saying the meek will be beautified is wildly countercultural.
Oh, completely.
And I don't just mean ancient culture. Think about our world today. Think about our corporate ladders or our social media algorithms, political landscape.
It's all about who is the loudest.
Exactly. We live in an ecosystem that consistently rewards the loudest, most aggressive voice in the room. We have this modern narrative that if you are meek, you are weak.
Yeah, the idea that if you don't aggressively promote yourself, you're just going to get stepped on.
Right. So how does meekness fit into this?
Well, we do tend to confuse the appearance of confidence with actual competence. A loud ego is very easy to measure because it takes up a lot of space.
It definitely takes up space.
But ancient wisdom clarifies that humility actually positions you for long-term elevation. Meekness, in its original context, was never about being a doormat.
Okay.
It's often compared to a warhorse.
A war horse.
Yeah. Think of an animal with immense power, muscle, capability.
Mhm.
But all of that power is completely under the control of its rider.
Oh, wow.
So meekness is power under control. It is having the capacity to force your way, to completely dominate a room, but actively choosing not to.
Power under control. So the ROI on humility is actually much higher than the ROI on ego, even if it takes a little longer to realize.
Significantly higher.
Yeah.
Because when you recognize that God actually delights in you and that he beautifies the humble, the psychological burden of leadership completely changes.
You don't have to prove yourself constantly.
Exactly. You no longer have to hustle endlessly for your worth. You don't have to shout down your opponents or micromanage your team just to feel secure in your authority.
You can just lead.
You can lead, you can serve, and you can exist from a place of quiet confidence. You lead with steadiness rather than ego, which honestly makes you infinitely more effective.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah, here we go.
Because we have this beautiful image, right? Singing in bed, playing the harp, the quiet, steady strength of the meek warhorse. But if we keep reading into verse 6, the instruments are suddenly replaced by weapons.
It is a sharp turn.
It's jarring.
Hmm.
The text says, "Let the high praises of God be in their mouth and a two-edged sword in their hand." And then it goes on to describe executing vengeance upon the heathen, punishments upon the people, binding their kings with chains, and nobles with fetters of iron.
What's fascinating here is the historical context.
Yeah.
Because without that context, that tonal shift feels almost like a mistake. It feels schizophrenic.
Right, like two different psalms got mashed together.
Exactly. To understand this, we really have to look at the reality of ancient Israel and their concept of covenant identity.
Let's break down covenant identity for a second, because that's a term thrown around a lot in theological circles. But what did it actually mean for the person holding that literal two-edged sword?
Think of it like a deeply binding constitutional, legal, and spiritual contract.
Okay.
Israel didn't just view themselves as a random collection of tribes who happened to live in the same geographic area. They understood themselves as a people in a covenant with God.
Right.
And that covenant defined their laws, their ethics, their worship, and their borders. Protecting that identity wasn't just, a matter of political maneuvering. It was absolute survival.
Because they were surrounded by threats.
Always. Surrounded by empires and nations that actively sought their complete destruction and assimilation.
So the worshipers, the exact same people who were just commanded to play the harp and dance, they also carried the immense literal responsibility for the physical survival and the justice of their community.
That is the absolute core of it. Worship back then was not passive.
Yeah.
You can look at historical parallels, like the story of Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem centuries later. The workers literally built the wall with a tool in one hand and a sword in the other.
Wow. Literally multitasking survival and building.
Right, and Psalm 149 is reflecting that exact same reality. The praise in their mouth and the sword in their hand were not contradictory at all. They were two necessary components of defending their covenant identity.
So what does this all mean for us today? Because obviously, you, the listener, you are not being asked to carry a literal two-edged sword to your morning stand-up meetings.
I would strongly advise against that.
Yes, please don't do that.
Mhm.
And you're not supposed to start binding your local city council in iron fetters either. We have to translate this ancient, intense imagery into the reality of modern life and modern leadership.
And the translation is where the profound psychological and practical depth of this text really reveals itself.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Psalm 149 holds two ideas in perfect tension: the joy of belonging to God and the heavy, unyielding responsibility of representing him in a flawed world.
Joy and responsibility.
Yes, the ancient wisdom here warns us that joy without discipline becomes shallow. It devolves into mere escapism.
Right. It's like using your spirituality or your weekend celebrations just to completely numb yourself to the responsibilities you have to your family or your community.
It's toxic positivity.
Yes, toxic positivity. Good vibes only while the world burns around you.
Exactly. And the inverse of that is equally damaging. Discipline and responsibility without joy become rigid, crushing, and cynical.
You just burn out.
You absolutely burn out. If we look at your personal and professional life, true success and true authority demand both. You absolutely should celebrate your wins.
Find that new song.
Find the new song.
Cultivate
A vibrant community. Experience genuine joy. But that same authority demands maturity. Influence demands integrity.
So the praise and the sword go together.
Always. If you have the high praises in your mouth,
Yeah.
you must also have the discipline, the metaphorical sword in your hand, to do what is right when it's difficult.
But how do we reconcile that today? Because I can see how it would be incredibly easy for someone to read about vengeance and a two-edged sword and think, great, this justifies me going on a righteous crusade against my coworkers or my neighbors who disagree with me.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we wield a metaphorical sword without just becoming the bad guy?
We have to clarify this heavily, because history is absolutely full of people who misread texts exactly like this to justify atrocities.
Right.
The imagery of the two-edged sword in a modern personal application is absolutely not a license for personal aggression, hostility, or cruelty.
It's not a hall pass to be a jerk.
Not at all. It is not an excuse to be a bully on the internet or a tyrant in your workplace or to seek petty personal revenge. Instead, it points to the rigorous upholding of justice, truth, and protection for others.
So it's about defense and advocacy, not unprovoked attacks. Let's ground this in a real-world example so we can really see it. Say you are a manager in a corporate boardroom and you watch a senior executive actively steal credit for a junior employee's project. Or maybe you see a policy being passed that clearly exploits a vulnerable group in your community.
In those moments, your sword is your willingness to step in.
Right.
It is your courage to speak the truth, to risk your own social capital, and to hold oppressive or unethical behavior accountable. Faith absolutely includes defending what is right.
It has to.
It has to. If you claim to have the joy of God, but you sit silently while injustice happens right in front of you, your praise is entirely hollow.
That's powerful.
The maturity of a leader is shown in how they wield their influence to protect the weak, rather than exploiting them or just turning a blind eye to maintain the status quo.
That makes perfect sense. Your faith has to have a backbone. You can't just dance in the sanctuary on Sunday and then be a coward in the boardroom on Monday.
Yeah.
And I think that brings us perfectly to the final verse, which really ties this whole concept of authority, justice, and worship together.
Verse 9.
Right. Verse 9 says, "To execute upon them the judgment written, this honor have all his saints."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the concept of honor in this text is completely redefined from how the ancient world, and honestly how our modern world, understands it.
Yeah, because usually when we think of someone binding kings or executing judgment, we think of an emperor or conqueror seeking personal glory.
We think of ego.
We think of ego.
Yeah.
But the text explicitly calls this an honor that belongs to all the faithful, all the saints.
Because true honor, the kind given by God, is tied entirely to your alignment with his purposes.
Okay, unpack that a bit more.
In an honor-shame culture, which the ancient Near East very much was, honor was usually extracted from others by force. You shamed your enemies to elevate yourself.
You push them down to pull yourself up.
Right. But God redefines honor as faithful stewardship. It never comes from personal dominance. It never comes from a desire to oppress others.
So where does it come from?
You are honored because you are entrusted with a heavy responsibility to act on behalf of a justice that is higher than your own personal agenda.
Right.
It is fundamentally an act of service.
Wow. That reframing changes everything about how we view our responsibilities, and I feel like it loops right back to our original mission today. How does this text deepen our trust and relationship with God?
Yes, that's the core of it.
Because if God is just some distant entity demanding perfection, it's incredibly hard to trust him. But if God is a king who actively delights in your joy, who honors and beautifies your humility,
And who actually partners with you.
yes, partnering with you, trusting you with the responsibility to bring about justice in your specific sphere of influence, that is a radically different relationship.
It moves from a passive spectator religion into a deeply personal, active partnership. When your heart is truly aligned with God's purposes, your influence becomes truly honorable.
Because it's not about you anymore.
Exactly. You are no longer acting on your own behalf, nervously trying to secure your own legacy. You become an ambassador of both his joy and his justice. You realize that he has equipped you with both the capacity to celebrate and the strength to defend what is right.
It's a beautiful, holistic framework for living. Let's recap the core takeaways for everyone listening, distilling this down to the essential pillars of Psalm 149.
Sound good.
First, celebrate with absolute sincerity. Find that new song. Don't let your gratitude go stale, and don't let your joy become a mindless routine.
Be present in it.
Be present. Second, walk in deep humility. Remember the war horse. The loudest, most aggressive voice isn't the most beautiful or the most powerful in God's eyes. He beautifies the meek.
Power under control.
Right. And third, carry your responsibilities with immense care. Your influence, your metaphorical sword, is meant to protect the vulnerable and uphold truth, never to dominate others or feed your own ego.
As a final synthesizing thought to tie the tension of this text all together, joy is not separate from justice, and praise is never detached from purpose.
They really are two sides of the same coin.
They are. A faithful, effective life requires both the dance and the sword, the celebration of what is good, and the courage to fight what is wrong.
So well said.
This
Yep.
raises an important question.
We've talked extensively about wielding the sword against outward injustice, in the boardroom, in the community, standing up for others.
Right.
But consider this. What happens when the hardest place to wield that two-edged sword of truth isn't out in the world, but inside your own life?
That's the real challenge.
What does it look like to turn that rigorous standard of justice inward, using it to cut away your own ego, your own biases, and your own deeply ingrained defense mechanisms? When you are given authority, how will you apply this information in your life?
That's the work we all have to do.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those hard questions, keep finding that new song, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you next time.